Hello dear students, welcome to part 3 of the video series on environmental and natural resources. Uh, in this series, we are going to talk about the concept of common but differentiated responsibilities. So, the logic here is that the developed countries of the world, they have done more damage, they have caused more damage and degradation to the environment, so they must undo the damage now. So, in the last 100 or 200 years, it was mostly the developed countries who enjoyed economic development at the cost of environmental degradation. So that is why they must also undo the damage, correct? If you have, I clean my own mess, that is what we teach in Silver Oaks. So the countries who have created this mess should clean this mess. Now, developing countries must not be subjected to the same restrictions as they are in the process of industrialization. So, developing countries are still trying to grow their industries, and that is why we cannot have the similar instructions. We cannot be told that use only green fuel in your industries because ours is a poor country. We do not have the resources, financial resources to afford such technologies. Our research and development program is not so advanced that we can come up with such technologies. So this burden cannot be shared equally because one, this burden was is the result of the actions of a few people, and the other people, they do not even have the money nor the technology to share this burden. So this argument was accepted in the Rio Declaration. Please remember this Rio Declaration, uh, which was signed at the Earth Summit in 1992. So Earth Summit was the conference, and Rio Declaration is the document which contains this argument and its acceptance. So this argument is called the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. This is important for your boards, CBDR. So these, it means that environment is our common resource, is a common resource, but the responsibility for undoing the damage is differentiated, which means it is different for different groups of countries. So the developed countries must play a bigger role in undoing the environmental damage. So if you look at the second picture here, so the smoke coming out of the wooden fire stove of a poor person is based on survival. They need to cook their food with that. While the smoke coming out of a private car of a rich individual, is a luxury. The rich individual can use public transport like metro and buses, but if they choose to use cars, then that is a luxury. If they even if they give up that car, their survival will not depend on that car. But this poor person cannot give up on those firewood cook stove because then they will die of hunger. So that is why the rich people must play a bigger role here. We cannot ask that both of these activities should stop. And if the rich people want the poor people to stop using wood, firewood based cook stove, then they should give them subsidized or even free gas connections or induction. Something must be done here. Now, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, that UNFCCC 1992. So this again is based on the acknowledgement that per capita emissions in developing countries are still relatively low. So, what do we mean by per capita emissions? So, like if you hear Donald Trump today, like not today, like in the last few years, Donald Trump has made this argument that the biggest carbon emissions, the largest carbon emissions, the source for that is China and India. But what he fails to see is that China and India also have a huge population. So we cannot compare a small countries with smaller population with countries with larger population. So if you want to make a comparison, then you need to find how much an average person's carbon emission is. So what is the carbon footprint of one US citizen versus one Chinese citizen versus one Indian citizen? So if you look at per person carbon emission, then it is very low in China and India, while the carbon footprint of a US citizen is very large. So that is why the uh, the guilt is not equal, the blame is not equal. India and China are big countries, and we need a certain kind of relaxations in order for us, for our people to live a good life. So these developing countries, they were exempted from the requirements of the Kyoto Protocol. So Kyoto Protocol is again was again international pact which was signed, which said that it's a non-binding protocol, which means that you cannot punish a country for not following it. So the Kyoto Protocol said that each country will try to decrease its carbon emissions, but of course, developing countries were exempted from it. So it is a Kyoto Protocol is an international agreement that sets targets for countries to cut their greenhouse gas emissions. So it is mostly carbon emissions along with a few other gases. So that was the issue which was discussed in the Kyoto Protocol. And the Kyoto Protocol was agreed to in 1997 in Kyoto, Japan, and that is why it is called Kyoto Protocol. Simple. Now, India and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Just a second. India has signed and ratified the 1997 Kyoto Protocol in August 2002. And India's stand is that the per capita emissions of the developing countries are a tiny fraction of those in the developed countries. So, like I said, the per person carbon footprint of an Indian citizen is very less compared to that of a US citizen. The major responsibility of carbon emission rests with the developing countries which have accumulated emissions over time. So again, India also believes in the arguments which we have mentioned earlier, that all this emissions have accumulated because of the long history of the developed countries engaging in industrial development, and that industrial development was so irresponsible. So that is why they must also take the responsibility for undoing the damage. Now, India's international negotiating position relies heavily on principles of historical responsibility as enshrined in UNFCCC. So, India, whenever we are trying to, as a nation, whenever we are trying to negotiate international climate agreement like the Kyoto Protocol, we rely heavily on the principle of historical responsibility, and this principle is written in the UNFCCC. So the principle of historical responsibility, as has been explained earlier, is that historically the developed countries have exploited the environment for their own economic benefits. They have done rampant environmental abuse, and based on that, they have grown their industries and factories. So that is why people and countries who have been historically responsible for this problem must also undo the damage that is happening in the present times. So this is India on the UNFCCC, and this is what is India's stand. Now, India is wary of recent discussions within UNFCCC about introducing binding commitments on rapidly industrializing countries. So India is little apprehensive about the recent developments in UNFCCC, because these developments say that we need to introduce binding commitments on rapidly industrializing countries. So most of international climate agreements are non-binding. Like it's on the member countries to follow them or not follow them. They cannot be punished for not following them. But now there are talks happening in UNFCCC that we need to introduce commitments which are binding, and these commitments also need to be put on rapidly industrializing countries, so which means developing countries like India and China. So, the US politicians, particularly now Donald Trump, have said this in the past also, that India and China have become huge economies and they should not enjoy the status of a developing country anymore, because they have huge economies. China is the second biggest economy. India was the fifth largest economy some time back. I don't know what is the status now. But the problem that they do not see is that these countries also have huge populations. So when you look at per capita income, it is very less. The average Indian or Chinese citizen is very, very poor. So when you look at that, then these countries are not on equal terms with developed countries. In the developed countries, the standard of living is very high, while in India and China, the standard of living is very low. So that is why it is like comparing apples to oranges. We cannot even say that these countries are developed countries. India and China need a lot of time and resources to grow. Only then they will be able to compete with the developed countries of the world. Now, the last thing which we are going to talk about is India's contribution to conservation of the environment, of course. So there is a prediction that India's rise in per capita carbon emissions, again look at the term per capita carbon emissions, by 2030 is likely to still represent less than half of the world average. So even with all the rapid industrialization happening in India, our per person carbon emission will be still less than half the world average. So again, India's per person contribution to carbon emissions will be very, very less in the future also. So that is why India is doing its fair share of environmental conservation. So the Indian government is already participating in global efforts through a number of programs. So, like you might know that India is a member of the Global Solar Alliance. So, India, along with other countries, are investing heavily is investing heavily in solar power. We even took part in that experiment of a solar powered aeroplane. So again, India is doing its bit. India's national auto fuel policy mandates cleaner fuel for vehicles. So again, initially India had lead mixed petrol and diesel, but right now we have moved away from lead mixed petrol and diesel, and we are using more cleaner fuels. The Bharat 6 norms again are somewhere on international standard of quality, based on standard level of quality. So again, our fuel policy is very environmental friendly. India's Energy Conversion Act passed in 2001 outlines initiative to improve energy efficiency. So we want to ensure that our energy consumption is not wasteful. Whatever energy we are consuming is used efficiently and is not wasted. So we are working on that. Electricity Act of 2003 encourages the use of renewable energy. That is why we are focusing on solar power to generate electricity, and hydroelectric dams, and windmills. So again, we are moving away from coal-based thermal power plants, and India has one of the largest renewable energy programs in the world. So if you see that, it is one of the largest renewable energy programs all over the world. So India is doing its bit for the conservation of environment. So we cannot be said that we are not serious about our commitment to the environment. Now I'll end this video here. In the next video, we are going to discuss about India's view on taking the environmental struggle forward.